Hello everyone, my name is Taya Davis, and today I will be advocating that the sentences sexual offenders receive are unjust. How many of you know someone that has ever been sexually violated and their offender walks away with no jail time? Well, by the end of this argument, you will understand why the sentences sexual offenders receive are unjust. Too often, sexual offenders receive no jail time. It is time that we prove to the justice system that doing so puts all of society at risk. Today I will discuss how the sentences sexual offenders receive are unjust. I will begin my argument by identifying the problems within these sentences and how the justice system does not give these victims the proper justice. Lastly, I will explain how victims are affected by sexual violence. Now that I have previewed my main points, I will now move on to my value object and hierarchy. My value object is sentences, the length of time offenders spend in prison. My value hierarchy number 1 is justice, ensures the wrongs will be ended and victims are safe. Value hierarchy number 2, victims, a person harmed as a result of crime. Now that you understand the value object and hierarchies of this argument, we will now move on to the criteria. Criteria 1. Sexual violent offender sentences should provide victims justice. Number 2. Sexual offender sentences should allow victims to live without the fear of being re-victimized. Now that you understand our criteria, I will now move on to prove that sexual offenders' sentences do not serve justice. Too often, the criminal justice system goes easy on sexual predators. When doing so, this strips the victims of the justice that they deserve. This is a fact that can easily be proven. I cannot count on one hand how many times I've been scrolling through social media and I've saw cases where this injustice took place. According to the anti-sexual violence website RAINN, posted in 2019, only 5 out of every 1,000 rapes committed ends in a felony conviction. Although registering as a sex offender will ruin someone's life almost completely and take many privileges away, it's not enough. According to the ABC News website, last updated in 2015, a 26-year-old bus driver who raped a 14-year-old girl gets no prison time, just probation and fines. This judge granted this offender this punishment solely because he had no prior record. This is a punishment that offenders receive way too often. It makes me wonder, although no allegations were reported, were there any similar crimes? Is this his first assault, or is this the only assault where the victim had the courage to come forward and talk about it? Placing these monsters back into society is only showing them that they're above the law and that they can get away with it. Believing that placing restrictions on where they live, where they work, and where they can travel will completely stop them from committing the crime is just completely insane. Now that I have discussed the lack of justice these systems give, I will now move on to my next main point. These sentences do not give victims the right to live their lives without the fear of being re-victimized. When a person is sexually assaulted, it changes their life forever. Too often, victims are too afraid to report it, whether it be because of embarrassment, sadness, or just too afraid that the offender will come back and hurt them. No offender should be too afraid to report. No victim should be too afraid to report what happens to them. Giving the offenders the ability to remain their freedom only forces that victim to live in constant fear that they're going to try to re-attack them. Victims are too often given the right to voice their pain. According to the Joyful Heart Foundation, posted on 2017 on their website, common mental effects that rape victims suffer from are post-traumatic stress, flashbacks, nightmares, anxiety, depression, suicide thoughts, and far more. These are disorders that may never go away. I believe that if the person that is causing these nightmares is out and able to hurt that person more, it's only going to increase the pain and cause more pain. It should be the criminal justice system's main goal to ensure that victims are aware of their rights and receive proper justice. According to the Marsy's Law for Tennessee website, last updated in 2020, Marsy's Law will ensure that victims have the right to be heard, the right to be notified of their offenders' releases, and punishments, and the right to be informed of their rights. Organizations like this and RAINN work every day to fight against sexual violence, and it's time that we all take a stand and show these criminals that these crimes will no longer be tolerated, that the victim's pain matters and deserves to be heard. And lastly, to show a person capable of committing such a heinous crime that they are not above the law and that they should be forced to suffer the consequences to the full extent of the law. In conclusion, after hearing this argument, you should now understand why the sentences sexual offenders receive are unjust. For the reasons above, I urge you to vote for the advocate's case. Thank you.